Hello, adventurers! This is Nate, and we're here with your second October 2014 Random Adventurers podcast. I'm here in the studio today with Ranger Liz.
Hi.
And Bryan.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, Shadow Era trading card game, and Publish or Die.
Along with... Wait, did you mention 5E?
Yes, I did.
He said D&D.
Okay, I'm not paying attention. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
I just want to dare you to leave that space in after you tried introducing me, and I just didn't say anything.
Yes.
I thought you were going to introduce Bryan first, and so you kind of threw me for a loop on that
I think I'm more of the new person in this one. You've actually been on the first one.
Yes. So, Bryan, why don't you tell us a bit about Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition?
Dungeons, it's the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, or Dungeons & Dragons Next, depending on what Wizards is actually calling it. Game's obviously been around a while.
Well, have you gotten a chance to play with it much yet?
I've played with it a couple times. I've run both games. Each time's had about 3 or 4 players. It worked out both times. Worked out pretty well. There weren't that many problems. Other than that, I mean, just to go over what the game is, it's your heroic fantasy RPG. Take on the character, doing adventuring for coin. You could actually be looking for someone else, but the way I've seen it, most of the people don't. They just, killing stuff and taking the loot.
Yeah, the old murder hobo
Correct,
scenario.
the murder hobo. It uses a variant of the D20 system. Pretty much the same D20 system since they introduced it for Dungeons & Dragons 3rd Edition. Any skill roll the D20. It has the slightly new thing where instead of giving you out bonuses for, like if you're flanking or if you're surprised and a series of different bonuses your characters can have, it basically reduced all that to just advantage, disadvantage. Advantage is if you have it, you gain additional die, drop the lowest. Disadvantage, the reverse, you gain additional die, drop the highest. Definitely speeds up a lot of things. You don't have to adjudicate much. You're like, oh, you're behind the person, you have advantage. The person hasn't seen you yet, you have advantage. You're prone, disadvantage. And it's definitely convenient if you have them from different sources because they'll just cancel each other out. Races for the game, same stuff they've been since 3.5. You have your normal human, dwarf, elf, halfling, half-orc, half-elf, with the tiefling and the dragonborn back.
Was the gnome back in the player's handbook?
Yes, the gnome is in the player's handbook again. It's in player's handbook 1. All the gnome fans can rejoice. The gnome is core again.
Hooray!
I don't
I've
know.
never played no gnome before. It does make me want to, though.
I don't know. Friends don't let friends play gnome.
I'm playing a gnome.
However, it's not just the elves are in the game. Where if you choose elf, you don't just choose elf. You have your different sub races for elf. So you can choose high elf, or if you're 40, the Eladrin, which is pretty much they went back to being high elves. Your wood elves, and drow are in core.
Okay, now that is a big change because before drow were considered really only to be a monstrous enemy race because they were always considered evil.
Yes, and considering the fact that the elf picture shows you Dritz, I think they're emphasizing that while drow normally are evil, that there is a large segment of the drow society that is following in Dritz's path. It's a Forgotten Realms world again for the core.
Okay.
Which isn't going to, I know, annoy the Greyhawk fans, but...
Well, I do remember there was the Society of Elestre who technically predated Drizzt. But,
I actually don't know. Haven't involved myself too much in Forgotten Realms.
Yeah. I just know about that there were Surface Drow before there were Drizzt. They were followers of the Drow goddess of art, music, illusion, and the basic bardic studies.
Okay.
So yeah, drow bards typically were chaotic, neutral to chaotic good.
Yeah. So, again, yeah.
Again, having the drow in the core rulebook does seem... I mean, it does seem like they're trying to reach out to try and get people to feel that these drow characters are more accepted.
Well, that, and you also know people are going to play them.
Yeah.
It's just the obvious sort of thing. People have been playing drow for a long time, and it's kind of annoying having to convert something from the monster manual to a player character.
To be fair to previous editions, they did have in the monster manuals, if you want to play a drow, here's your stat block.
Yeah, but then you have to carry around the monster manual for your character, and it's just easier to have the player's handbook.
Correct, it is. Classes, all the 3.5 fans can rejoice that the same classes that were in 3.5 are in 5e. Your bard, barbarian, cleric, druid, fighter, wizard, paladin, rogue, ranger, sorcerer, and with the addition of the warlock, which was a core race in 4th edition.
Monk's still in there?
Yes, monk is still in there as well.
Ah, okay.
I always forget about monk.
That's okay. Unless Tony Shalhoub is playing him, most people do forget about the monk.
Yeah, monk is kind of overlooked pretty often.
And what's nice with the classes is you also have, each class has a certain segment of, I don't want to call them prestige classes, because they're not really prestige classes, but they're not necessarily your paragon paths that you would recognize from 4E. They're kind of like that, though, and it's different levels for each class. You pick a path that you're going to go down. Like wizards, you can pick which school you're going to be focusing on. Or sorcerers can be wild mages or draconic mages. Almost all the classes have a spellcasting component, so you don't have to multi-class to be able to spellcast no matter what your pick is. Unless you pick barbarian.
On the other side, barbarians with their rage can kill people with their minds.
Yes, they can. One of the things I actually kind of like with the new game system, though, is they've really limited. I don't want to say limited as it sounding a bad thing. They've really seemed like they've made an attempt to rein in certain things that got excessive in previous editions. Your ability modifiers. None of your ability scores can go above 20. So, once you get... Which is nice, because once you get that, you can focus on other things. You can make your characters more balanced. Plus, and I'll get into this in a little moment, the way the feat system works, it's kind of good that you don't have to constantly focusing on that next stat bump.
So you mean I can't have an absurd sleight of hand?
Yes and no. Yes and no. Yes and no. There are ways to get it absurd.
Hooray!
Yeah.
You still have an absurd sleight of hand.
Rogues and bards can get the absurd skills.
Do you know if pick lock is separated from sleight of hand? Or the lock-picking skill?
The lock-picking skill is not a skill. It's a tool proficiency.
Okay.
There are skill proficiencies, there are tool proficiencies, and they work similarly. You add your proficiency bonus, which increases as your character level goes up. Mm-hmm. You add it to your ability modifier, and that's your roll. Certain abilities augment this on one or two ways, obviously, but that's pretty much the standard. You have your ability rolls, which are the equivalent of your skill checks, your attack rolls, and saving throws. And each skill has its own saving throw. Each ability modifier has its own saving throw. So You can make a strength. There's spells that can force you to make a strength saving throw. There's spell that can make you make an intelligence saving throw. Although from what I've heard, psionics will add more into saving throws to the game.
Well, that makes sense.
Yep. Big ones are still con, reflex, will, and charisma saves are actually important. They tend to be important for resisting banishment.
Definitely sounds important.
Yep.
So, sounds like there's a lot of good things that you've covered. What about the bad?
There are things I don't like. It returns to Vancian spellcasting. I'm not a big fan of Vancian spellcasting. I just don't see it can be. In my opinion, it's very hard to balance. You have at-will abilities that the mundane or martial classes get, and you're trying to balance them against the daily powers that spellcasters get. Although they did do a lot to rein in the Vancian spellcasting system. They added concentration checks, so certain spells have, for their duration, have listed as you have to concentrate on them. And you can only concentrate on one spell at once, so it limits the amount of buffing that wizards and other spellcasters can stack on. As well as anytime you take damage, you have to make a con saving throw to keep the spell up. So it definitely reins it in a little bit. I'm still not a total fan of Vancian spellcasting, however. There's a lot of other little things in it. The organization for the spells, 3.5, you had all the spells listed in the where you would list all the class spells. Like, this is your list of wizard spells. Would also have them listed by as level as well as the school they're in to make it really convenient for wizards to, especially if you're an abjuration wizard or an evocation wizard. You just look at the list and go, okay, I want to look at this spell, and this spell. Now you get the organization's a little off, so you have to. It doesn't list what school they're in the spell list, so you have to go to the spell's description to find it.
For casters that make use of a school or have school clerics who have domain spells.
Well, the nice thing about the domain spells actually aren't that bad for clerics because in the cleric section, it's listed what spells each domain gets. So that's not a bad thing. So you don't have to look throughout the cleric spells to figure out what domain you get. But definitely for wizards, for certain fighters and certain rogues who can get access to the wizard spell list, but it's restricted based on what school the spell's from, it definitely is a lot more convenient to have them listed by school. One other thing, in terms of my wishes for the system, is I just wish it was a little bit more customizable. I know as it stands, you pick your race, you generate your ability scores, you pick your class, there's a background system in it as well. And that can sound like a lot, but I'm also used to playing 3.5 where you pick your class, your ability scores, your races, you choose a feat, you have you just have a bunch of other things as you level up, and also in 4E where you also have a selection of powers that you pick from. Maybe I'm a little bit spoiled from choice from previous editions. I just wish there was a little bit more customization as you go. Especially since feats in this game are listed as an optional rule, so not every game will have them.
Ooh, yeah, don't like that. I've always been a fan of allowing players to be able to customize their characters. That's why I've liked the merit systems from the Storyteller games, feat systems from D&D, and even the systems for Savage Worlds that let you not necessarily optimize, but build your character to be how you want it. And so no two characters of the same theme are even alike.
Any game I play in, any game I would run at least, not necessarily restricted to games I play in, I would want to have feats available to you. You get less feats as you go up, because in order to get a feat, you have to sacrifice one of your ability stat boosts that you get as you level up. However, the feats are more powerful. The feats seem to be equivalent of like 2 or 3 feats in one. Plus, a bunch of them even have ability stat modifiers tied with the feats as well. So, say you pick Actor, you get a bonus to your Charisma. You pick one of the other weapon fighting feats, and you get a bonus to Strength or Dexterity. So, you're not completely sacrificing your ability stat modifiers to take a feat.
But instead of getting +2 to 1 or +1 to 2 of them, I'm getting a +1
and
plus
a feat. And whatever the remainder of the feat is.
So that makes them overall more worthwhile having, as opposed to like that one time when we played that high level game and everybody kept forgetting what feats they had.
Yeah, exactly.
Speak for yourselves. I knew what feats I had.
Okay, you remembered some of your feats, but I remember trying to rewrite my character sheet because it was all messy, and then I was like, oh, I had that? Oh well.
And there's definitely less feats that are not worthwhile taking.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously more feats that are situational. There's feats that really, in order to get the full benefit, you have to work with the DM for, which makes those feats more situational. But even that said, there's about 40 feats in there, and there's only like 4 or 5 feats that are so situational that you wouldn't consider using them for a lot of campaigns.
Okay. I mean, I remember there was one situational feat that I particularly loved. It was from the D&D 3.5. It was in the Warrior's Handbook.
Okay.
What it did is if you were flanked by 2 enemies and you declared your dodge on one of them, when that guy attacked you, the attack missed, it would automatically hit his friend who was flanking you.
Yeah. I get it. There's abilities like that in the game. I just don't remember anything offhand that does anything like that.
But so it is possible to set yourself up for that nice little.
And that might be in the. And that
shot.
might be in the. That might be actually in the fighter class in general. I know fighter. One of their paths has that you get like a set of battle maneuvers that you can do. One of them might do that. I remember reading that. I just don't remember where in the book.
Okay. Definitely sounds good.
And make no mistake. Even though I had a couple negatives, make no mistake. I do like this system. It's It may not be. I'm one of those weird people who liked 4E. So, sorry people. Please don't shout too loudly. I know a lot of people didn't like 4E. I did. And I will say that it definitely doesn't have that really tight balance or strategic battle that 4E had, which I know a lot of like the 4E fans liked, but it still tries to be a balanced game.
Yeah,
and it does reasonably well at being balanced. The spells don't get really ridiculous until you get to higher levels, which always happens in a D&D or Pathfinder game. So,
yeah. Which, you know what, by the time I'm level 19, I do kind of expect wizard spells to be able to dish out auto death to anything short of a god.
Sorry, there's only one saver dice ability in the entire game.
I'm fine with that.
And it's Monk.
I'm extra fine with that.
Yes. Quivering Palm, the only outright saver die.
Alright. Now you mentioned that ability scores are going to cap at 20.
Correct. For players, they cap at 20.
For players, they cap at 20.
Monsters cap at 30.
Monsters cap at 30. So what if I'm already at 19 and I put on my Gloves of Ogre Strength?
You've already hit that point. A lot of the magic items that we've seen so far, which they seem to be a lot of them saving for the Dungeon Master's Guide, they don't give you those flat bonuses. +4 weapons, +5 weapons are gone. They cap out at +3. And your Gauntlets of Ogre Strength just give you a strength score of 19.
Okay,
and they require attunement. And you're only allowed to attune to 3 items at a time, each of which requires a 1-hour ritual.
Okay.
It's one of the things I like. So you don't have to be chasing the magic items. And definitely you don't have to... It makes it so it's not 100% necessary to even have magic items. It also makes that +1 sword that in previous editions would be, oh, it's a +1 sword, yay, into, oh my god, I got a +1 sword.
Yeah.
And if you get that +3 sword, be happy. You got one of the best. You got a relic at that point.
I do like that.
I also like the way they did multi-classing in this game. Because of the way your ability score modifier boosts, all your ability score modifiers that you would get are tied to your classes. So if you want to get an ability score, you have to get to level 4 in one specific class before you get it. because it's in your class features section. So it definitely makes it so you don't want to just take a bunch of level dips. You want to focus a little bit. But even so, multi-classing isn't horrible either. Your spell casting, in terms of what spell slots you have, is determined based on all your levels in spell casting.
Capable classes. Some classes are counted less. Your ranger is counted as a half level instead of a wizard, which is a full progression class. But you'll have 9th level spells if you take all full progression levels. You just won't have actual 9th level spells to cast with. But don't worry. The wizard and all of the the classes that you would normally prepare your spells in advance, instead of having to prepare instead of the wizard having to prepare magic missile twice a day in level 1 spell slot and a level 2 spell slot, you just prepare magic missile. So I have magic missile, and then throughout the day I can cast magic missile as often as I want, and if I want to cast it using a level 2 spell slot, I can do so. So it gives them a little more flexibility that they didn't have in prior editions. Yeah, it kind of gives them the flexibility that 3/5 psionic characters had, which is
they have the flexibility that the old or sorcerers as well, where you have your spells that you know for that day, and you cast them, but you can cast them as many as you want or in any combination.
Yeah, the 3/5 psionic character I could buy. I would, let's say, have a level 1 spell, but if I wanted to use it like it was a level 2 spell, I would just pay the cost as if it was a level 2, because psionic characters didn't have spell slots.
Oh yeah, they had their power points.
So I would just spend power points like it was a 2nd level power, and it would boost up the damage to about the level of a 2nd level power. So if I cast my in 5th edition, if I cast my magic missile as a 2nd level spell, is it going to get a damage boost, or?
You get an additional missile that you get. You start off with 3 missiles, and then you go up to 4, or I think it's +1 missile each level slot you cast above 1st level.
Okay.
So, and a lot of other wizard spells are like that. Your fireball increases in strength, sleep increases in strength.
So it gives you a boost in strength to cast it as a higher level spell. So.
And some of them even eliminate, or some of them also eliminate other restrictions that the spell has. I think some of them might eliminate this, or make it so the duration lasts longer. And I think some of the spells actually even eliminate the concentration requirement for it.
Okay.
So they get powerful in different ways. Damage dealing spells just go up in damage, but other spells get other neat little added bonuses to them.
Well, that definitely sounds good.
Yep.
And I do like the burden of, I need to fill up my 3 3rd level spell slots with my damage spells because we're getting ready to go into the dungeon, but oops, guess what? We needed my utility spell.
And since you mentioned 3rd level spells, and this is especially true for abjurers, for abjuration wizards, counterspell seems really, really useful. As in every 5th level wizard, or any 5th level arcane, or any 5th level character that has access to counterspell, you should take counterspell. Because it counter anything of a 3rd level spell or lower, it just flat out counters. And if it's a higher one, you make a skill roll to against the level of the spell you're countering, and it counters it that way. So it's a lot more useful than it was in previous editions.
Well, that definitely sounds good. So, Brian, if you had to rate D&D 5th edition using our handy rating scale of 1, not even my enemies deserve this crap, to 10, gaming nirvana, what would you rate it?
I would definitely rate it about a 7. It's a good system. It's not my ideal. Like as I said, I liked 4E, which was had that nice tighter balance to it. But it's definitely a worthwhile system to play. It's easy to run. It's very streamlined. And it's just a fun experience.
All right. Well, we will definitely look forward to the one My one complaint about it has been with its release that it was a staggered release with the 3 core books.
And I don't like that either. I will admit.
But that doesn't ding the system itself, so I just think that's bad marketing.
It only dings the system for this period of time before the DMG is out.
Yeah.
They've released the basic DMG rules, which gives you a lot of their beta rules for it, which is okay. I do wish it was all released at once. If you couldn't get everything out for Gen Con, release it as Christmas. But not enough to rate it, not enough to give them too down of a rating.
Yeah.
Since they never said they were going to be released all at once.
And
yeah.
I don't know if it's just because I haven't been as active on our Saturday groups with only going once a week. But I really haven't heard that much. I mean, when 4E came out, there was a whole lot of stuff from the YouTube videos and a whole bunch of other things advertising it. I really didn't hear much about it. It just almost... We went to Gen Con and I'm like, oh, there's a 5th edition coming out?
And that's one of the things I really wish...
It kind of blindsided me.
I really wish I had participated in the playtests for it. Because, I mean... Simply so I could have known a little bit more about what the edition was before looking at it. Plus, I could have also, hopefully, I'm not saying the playtesters didn't notice this, but I probably would have liked to think I would have emphasized, sorting the spells out, like 3-5 spells where it is a good idea. But I just really wish I had participated in that, so I could have been involved in the process. Which I know they gave out things to a lot of people, so
yeah.
That's my fault, not Wizards.
Exactly. So, moving on. Shadow Era. Ranger Liz, I believe you are going to be taking control here.
Am I taking control?
Yep.
All
this
right.
is going to be your little feature.
Oh, well, thanks for letting me know.
Yep,
I brought
there's
down
the
my
bus.
cards 'cause
If you'll just lay down right here.
Oh, you're throwing me under the bus. Oh, I got it. Thanks. But, yeah, Shadow Era, these are basically, you get a choice of heroes. There's several different classes, and there's 2 factions. There's the human faction and then the shadow faction. So, when you look at the cards, you'll see, like, the human hero and the shadow hero. And, what's your favorite class to play, Nate?
My favorites have been so far Warrior, Mage, and Rogue.
Alright.
Now, one question I have, and this is a question I would ask anytime a card game comes out. LCG or CCG? Limited, living card game or collectible card game?
I think it's kind of...
Bit of both.
Yeah, it's a bit of both.
Okay, how does that work? In terms of, like, buying it,
well,
do I get random cards, or do I know what I'm getting?
You get random cards.
You get random cards.
Okay.
But you can play online, which kind of has the other way where you can actually know what you're getting. So, yeah, if you want the physical cards, it's probably more of a CCG, where you don't know what you're getting, and you have to trade and stuff.
Okay.
But then, like, if you play online, though, you have the other way. And each class, as you can see, there's, which I recorded, actually, some video, which Nathan will be showing. There's different heroes for each class, and these heroes have different abilities that you can use, and each turn your hero gets what's like a shadow point, I believe it's called.
Yep.
And that gets added onto your character, and they can use their abilities.
All you have to do is remove whatever number
Yeah.
is there for shadow points.
Now I see there's like warriors, hunters, rogues. I assume a shadow rogue would be different than a human rogue.
Correct.
Yeah, they would, more based on their ability.
Okay.
Yep.
And then also what they can have, because then you can add in allies, and there's human allies and there's shadow allies, which are different. And
human and shadow abilities as well.
yeah. And some of them have their own abilities as well. Some of them just sort of have natural things that happen, but
For example, you can have a human card, which is called Special Delivery, which basically lets you take a bomb to the other player and blow off a bit of their hero's life or blow up one of their allies.
Okay, so there's...
Yeah. And to place any card, you have to spend points. And you get these points actually by sacrificing other cards. And you have like a stack, and it refreshes each time. You still have the amount that you have, but you kind of spend the amount.
Basically, for every card you sacrifice out of your hand, you get 1 resource point a turn.
Yeah, you get a resource point. And you spend those resource points to put out allies.
Now, would you redraw your hand every turn?
Yeah, you draw 1 new card every turn.
Yeah, you only can sacrifice 1 thing per turn.
Yeah, you can sacrifice 1 card per turn.
So like this card has a cost of 2.
Yeah.
I can sacrifice 1 card this turn, and the next turn I sacrifice another card, and that's when I get it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And the cards that you sacrifice, just because you spend them, they just come back the next turn. So you don't have to continually sacrifice stuff.
Yeah. We cover that because they...
Yeah.
We said you get a resource point a turn for every card you sacrifice.
So there might be some turns where you just don't sacrifice anything, because if you have everything in your hand that you really like, it can be really hard to sacrifice one of them. So that adds in a little... When you're building your deck, you need to bear in mind that some of these things you might need to sacrifice.
Now, when you sacrifice it, is it gone, period, or do you ever get it back into your deck?
You don't ever...
Depends on a creature's ability. I think there's something that allows you to pull something out of...
Yeah.
But for the most part, consider it gone. There's only one thing that's exiling a card. I've seen a couple of cards that do this. If you exile a card, it is forever out of the game. It cannot be pulled out of the graveyard. It cannot be pulled out of a...
So it has you sacrifice a card, which effectively goes to like a discard pile, but exiled is removed from the game.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, and I remember Magic had a system like, or named their stuff similar to that recently.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's also abilities, weapons for if you want to have your hero fight. Like, I like to play with the Wolvens, so here's this one weapon. It cannot... Most weapons
would those attach to a hero?
Yeah, those attach to the hero.
Okay.
Most weapons, they over time will break down. You can only use it so many times.
Can you repair them?
No.
No.
Oh.
Big Teeth, on the other hand, which is a woven one, that will never break down.
It appears to be a wolf.
Yes.
Yes, the Wolven are basically werewolves.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I hope your werewolves aren't
their teeth aren't breaking
aging
down
that fast.
But you can only have one weapon at a time. So I said
one weapon per hero, or one weapon period.
One weapon on your hero, and since you can only have one hero per deck, so
when your hero runs out of life, you're down.
Weapons in your deck, you just can only have one attached at a time.
Okay.
And the only reason why I don't want to play the one deck I want to play in real life is because I only have one Big Teeth. Because I've only just started collecting.
Yeah.
I can't photocopy it. That's cheating.
I've seen people do proxy cards all the time.
I know.
Just proxy it until you get it.
But yeah, because you can only have one weapon attached at a time. The one deck that I want to do where it's just you don't really have any minions fighting for you. It's your hero fighting it all.
Are there any limits on how you can build your deck?
It depends on what kind of game you want to play. When you play the online one, they start you off with it's like a
45 card deck.
45.
Okay.
No, it's less than that.
No. When you first start your first game, it's 25 cards.
Yeah.
But then as soon as you complete your first game, you go to 45.
Yes, and you can keep building up in how many cards. And I think it's usually like a 50 card deck is pretty average.
Well,
one hero, and then
I assume you can't just take the same card for all 50 cards.
No.
No, there's a limit of 5 of any given card.
Okay, 5. That's.
I never reached that limit when I was making my own deck. And we didn't actually, when we got to their booth at Gen Con, we didn't get there in time to actually buy a deck. We actually had to buy a whole bunch of booster packs, and this is from booster
Oh, you missed
packs.
out on the starters?
Yeah,
I missed out on the
had
starters.
sold out of their starters.
That's unfortunate.
But
Starters, the starters I've bought for other games have definitely been worthwhile.
yes. I have thought eventually about buying several starters, but each booster pack will come with a hero and then a mix of other stuff. So if you buy like several of them, you can make a deck out of it.
Okay.
And that's what Nathan and I decided to do since
So,
we're on sale.
how do you win this game?
Kill the other hero.
Yep.
Any other ways to win?
Run your opponent out of cards.
Okay, so milling is a strategy.
Yes,
Milling
is a strategy.
is a strategy.
In fact, there is...
Any good milling cards?
Yes, there is. But the thing is, a lot of those milling cards deal problems with you too. Like,
You mill yourself as you mill them?
Yes, so you have to be careful. There's a lot of strategy involved in this.
Yeah,
But
I'd hope so.
Oh yeah.
there's one.
The
of them-
Bazaar is actually a
Yes, that's
very
the one
good
I was
one.
trying to see if I could find the Bazaar, which pretty much you draw 2 cards.
You
each
draw 2 cards.
turn.
Each player
Instead of
draws
one?
2 cards instead of 1 on the start of their turn.
Okay.
Or draw. I'm sorry. It says you draw 1 extra card on the start of your turn. So if you have multiple Bazaars out, somebody could be drawing 2 or 3 cards
Okay.
every turn. So you have to make sure that you have a way to make sure that you don't draw yourself out of existence before they do.
Yeah, definitely don't want to do that. Now, you said there were 2 factions. Do you know if future expansions to the game might have more, or is it only looking like the 2 factions?
I saw when you're on the
website,
it looks like there's going to just be the 2 factions. It looks like. There's nothing really out yet from it. There's some people who are beta testing it. But...
they're people beta testing the 3rd expansion. So they're only on their 3rd expansion for this.
Okay. Are there sub-factions to the game?
Really the sub-factions would be the class, because you do have, for example, human rogue minions.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume there's stuff that emphasize rogues versus warriors versus mages
Because I
versus
do
priests.
have the minions, like, here's Shadow Ally Wolven. And so these would only go into a Wolven deck.
Because your allies can only be Wolven, or...
Well, because if your hero is Wolven, you have to match all those criteria.
Well, here, like, Shadow Ally, I can put this into
any
my
shadow.
Wolven deck, yeah.
Yep.
Any
shadow deck.
But that one has to be with a Wolven hero.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
The Wolven guy won't work for a non-Wolven guy?
No,
Pretty much.
He needs a pack leader.
He needs a pack leader.
And they're like the elementals. I'm sure there's an elemental one that it only follows the elemental. So, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of options to building a deck, and really no 2 decks, or no 2 heroes play the same because of their abilities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting, at least.
It is. It is a lot of fun, and you can play for free on their through their website.
Yep.
So you can learn to play before you commit to buying any cards.
That is definitely a plus.
Most definitely.
Yes.
In fact, I have it installed on my laptop, my smartphone, and if I had a iOS or Android tablet, I'd have it on there as well.
Okay.
If anyone's played Hearthstone, it plays pretty much the same. It's just I personally enjoy this one better because with Hearthstone, you can pick your class, but they all play...
There's only one Warlock hero,
Yeah, there's only one Warlock hero, so they have the same ability. They don't necessarily play the same, but because the hero has that one ability, you're kind of locked into that. And I like the fact that the heroes have different abilities, which allow you. It just makes things a lot.
It makes it
different.
So you're not just playing to one rule. You're allowed to make a deck that's a little bit more balanced or diverse.
You remember?
It's less matchup dependent.
Yeah, like when I'm playing, I think it's Moonfang, the one, and then there's Shadow. Where's the two Wolvens?
It's Darkclaw and Moonstalker.
And Moonstalker. So when I'm playing Moonstalker, because it has an ability to shroud my allies in mist along with me, I have a tendency to want to have a ton of allies. And then store up my shadow points so I can continually shroud them in mist and keep them from being attacked by my enemy's allies, and just have a ton of allies on my field and just totally mob my opponent.
Okay.
While I'm playing Darkclaw, on the other hand, I like playing him as solo, not having any allies, and just having him rip apart my opponent by himself.
Another good example of that, for example, is there's two human warrior heroes. One is male, one is female.
Okay.
The male character, you spend 4 shadow points, and he will kill any opposing ally who is cost 4 or lower.
Okay.
The female hero, you spend 3 shadow points, and she'll add +2 damage to any weapon she's carrying.
Okay.
So they definitely create 2 different play styles and even 2 different concepts going into building your deck.
Okay, it's definitely nice that they have a diverse setup. So you're not all the human decks aren't very similar, and all the shadow decks aren't the same.
Exactly. Now, I'd like to spend some time talking about something that I've noticed in the role-playing game industry.
Why don't we take a quick break first?
Alright, we will take a quick break, and we'll be back in 5. And we're back after our break. So, now we're going to talk about something that I have found in the role-playing game industry. Something that bothers me.
We started talking about it a little bit in 1 when we started talking about Shard.
Yes, and what we are talking about is called a phenomenon I call publish or die. We've seen it happen with a lot of good, independent game lines, and we've seen it happen to even some big names that have disappeared over the years. And that is that if you don't keep turning out books, people seem to forget about your game and move on to something else. Or if you keep promising books and not delivering them, fans begin to feel rejected and move on. So, as I was talking about last time with Shard, fans waited for almost 2 years to receive any kind of heads up, even on the status of the Magic and Martial Arts book for Shard. You know, they were waiting for it. They
had demos of it each time at Gen Con, and it looked like it was almost complete, but they said it wasn't ready to be published yet. So that kind of, after a while, I almost was about ready to say, I don't care, we'll just play with it normal, but that book held so much more information on, because it was the Magic and Martial Arts book, that really would have helped with running another game.
Probably would have also had some world information, too.
Yeah.
World information.
And more species.
Species, not to mention, the big thing is that when you start having martial arts, you get to start talking about the martial arts world. Martial arts competition, martial arts, the concept of the sensei or sifu and their relationship with their student even, and martial arts styles too even start to pop up. So all of that, when you start to combine it together, starts to develop a very, very cultural elements, because Chinese style martial arts are not the same as Indian style martial arts, which are not the same as Japanese and Korean martial arts,
or European,
or even
American. Even European or Native American martial arts. Were all different, all emphasized different things, all felt very unique and different. But with Shard, they kept promising this. Fans kept waiting eagerly to receive it, And they kept posting on their forum. You know, you keep saying this. When is it coming out? When is it coming out? What is the status on this? Are you waiting for art? You know, what can we do to help move this along? You know, we want to help you move this along. We love this game. We want to see it succeed. But then it started to turn very bitter. It started to turn into jokes about, oh yeah, that'll be out in like 2066. And, you know, you began to feel the fans turn bitter and hostile toward the creators because the creators kept promising and not delivering.
And I understand that. I've seen other games not get to where Shard was, but I know there's frustration with other games if they don't. I've seen some frustration over the lack of books for like Privateer's RPG. They've never really overpromised there either, and pushed back, but there's people that would like it to be more than once a year kind of thing.
Yeah. Now, I don't know about more than once a year, but I would like to see at least one decent-sized hardback a year for a game line.
And I know, like with Wizards with D&D, they seem to have said they're going to be more focused on adventures for 5e than necessarily publishing new rules. But even that, if you're publishing something, keeping the game in the awareness, publishing new adventure ideas, even if you don't buy the adventure, it still gives you something to draw from.
Which is something Shard could have done. I mean, they had their sample game, but, you know, they could have put maybe a little information about the new rules and gave small samples of that to keep us still excited about the idea of the magic and martial arts and let us know that they really were still working on it by giving us new games or more sample games to play with. But I didn't really see anything along such lines.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to get to a point where people like look at it as like a failed Kickstarter where you took my money, but I don't get anything for it.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be like that.
No.
Yeah, now, fortunately, they, for example, didn't take any money, but they did keep over-promising, and the big promise was that we'll have it out for you so that you can buy it at next Gen Con, and that kept happening. And then suddenly they stopped going to Gen Cons.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to keep disappointing fans. Because they kept having people come up to them at the Studio 2 booths saying, oh, hey, the book's out, right? And, you know, that hurt their morale as much as it hurt the morale of the fans. So, Privateer, you know, if anybody from Privateer hears this, you know, don't follow in their footsteps.
And I don't think Privateer is usually, if you go on the forums, in terms of releasing anything, they always say it will be done when it's done, kind of thing. But they rarely, if they push anything back, it's usually, from what I've seen, due to production reasons or technical problems that they can't actually handle. They couldn't actually, not handle, but things they couldn't foresee necessarily. Yeah. So I don't think that's been too big of a problem. I know there's just been a lot of fans disappointed because the core book came out 2 years ago. Then the second core book came out last year. But they at least also have their note quarter where they can publish little extra things too.
Yeah, they have their magazine, and it's still published as a magazine.
Correct.
Yeah. Which was one thing that I got mad at Wizards of the Coast for doing with Dragon and Dungeon magazines.
When they moved it online?
When they moved it to online only. Now, okay, I can see maybe we're no longer going to release in all major magazine outlets. Okay. But to not even be able to go down to my local hobby store and maybe pick up and even, okay, so you don't think you have enough content to fill both a Dragon and a Dungeon magazine. Combine them. Make a Dungeons and Dragon magazine.
I always thought that was kind of weird that they had two magazines.
Yes.
It didn't seem like the content was radically different from each one.
Well, the content in Dungeon was supposed to be started off when they split it off. It was pretty much just all adventures, and it was all DM side stuff.
Okay.
Dragon magazine had some player information in there.
Okay.
Too. It was not just, setting up adventures and conflicts and mapping advice and all of that. Dragon was races and player archetypes and those sort of things. Feats and flaws. Things that, maybe not necessarily feats and flaws when it first started out, but it was all originally advice that could be, or information that was usable for both players and DMs, as well as some funny comics and other stuff.
Okay.
When they, I think they should have combined them together, and then they would have had enough content for one magazine. That would have been at a, reasonable magazine thickness. And yeah, maybe just only sell it online and at hobby centers.
And one thing I do want to point out is by no means should we be trying to push anyone. If you're trying to make a role-playing game, by no means should you try to rush your release of your books. Finish your product, but if you have to, start with either give something to keep your fans interested, release things to keep your fans interested, or even if it's free stuff, like free little adventures to get people excited about it or keep people excited about it. Or maybe you're aiming too high. You might, instead of having a magic and martial arts book, maybe they could have split into one magic book and a martial arts book.
Yeah, if your magic section wasn't finished, split the book.
Yeah.
Just release, if you had the martial arts book done, just release that.
Yeah.
And fans would have ate it up. They would have loved it. Even if it's a 60-page little book.
Or even if you had to split the book into two, like book 1 of this, book 2 of this.
Yeah.
But don't feel like you have to rush and rush out unfinished product.
Yeah.
I'm very much, it's part of the reason why I'm kind of a fan of Nintendo. They don't rush out games and they put out half-finished stuff.
Yes.
In fact, there's a beautiful quote. I don't know where. I would have to look it up because I can't say it by verbatim. But pretty much, you can put out a bad game and it's going to be known as a bad game forever. You can delay a game and put it out a good game, and
fans will love you forever.
Or love it.
They'll forget that it was delayed.
Yeah, they'll forget that it was delayed.
Or they'll be willing to forgive. But they usually, add stuff onto it. Of
course, you could go the opposite route and delay a game forever and then release it, and it's still
yeah,
horrible.
And it's still crap. Oh my goodness!
I believe Duke Nukem Forever.
I never played it, so I can't judge that one.
Yeah, but also an example I'm going to pull from for that is Exalted 3rd Edition. It was originally promised in their Kickstarters October 2013. It's October 2014 currently, and it's still not out. But it is slated for release, hopefully, sometime this winter.
And I do believe that they've been able to keep your attention on it.
They have been able to keep my attention on it, and one of the ways they've done that is that periodically they have released things. Their most recent release was they showed fans 4 of the sketches that have come back from the artists for the book art. But another thing that they've done is one of the writers, Robert Vance, I love the guy on the forums. He on their forums has released what has been referred to as the napkin spoilers, where he, with his horrible penmanship, would show people his notes from putting stuff together when he was talking with the others, but he would write his notes down on napkins. And you combine poor penmanship with writing on a napkin and cell phone picture the napkin spoilers, he would say, this is the sorcery system, and you would see, like, blob of text, lines. So, oh, wait, we got, like, 6 little subdivisions of blobs of text. That looks like it might be important. And people would, for almost a month on the forum, go, what could these possibly mean?
Yeah.
I remember a couple times on Privateer's website, they would have sheets, they'd print off stuff that would sound like your spoilers, but they'd be heavily redacted.
Exactly.
It's keep people interested.
It keeps people interested. They'll try and fill in the redactions. And then they've even given
and there's
some...
always a week of Mad Libs with them, too.
And a week of Mad Libs with us, too, yeah. But, then they would also release very real spoilers. Like, they released hints about the combat system. They released hints that... one of the big hints they released is we're going to be doing something new with the artifacts, so that you don't just have a generic orichalcum, magic sword. It, kind of like in D&D, where they said that they kind of felt that they didn't want the magic swords in Exalted to feel like, in old-style D&D, where it's like, this is a +2 magic sword, I'm going to turn it in for a +3 magic sword later. They wanted artifact weapons to feel unique. So now what they are doing is you form a bond with your weapon, like King Arthur did with Excalibur.
And it gets stronger with you?
It gets stronger with you.
That's one thing that I might actually be interested in. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm saying this! Playing Exalted! Because I am so sick and tired of the idea that, like, in D&D, you can name... Sure, I like the idea of naming your weapons, but then suddenly I get something nicer in the dungeon, and it's like, okay, named weapon that I've been using for probably since I was level 1, and I'm now currently level maybe 5. I'm just gonna toss you to the side. Or actually, I'm gonna sell you in the next shop. Or let's be serious here. I'm getting money.
Orc Slayer? Demon Slayer. Who wants Orc Slayer?
Well, we're not facing orcs anymore. Orc Slayer for sale.
I'll stick you in the far back part of my bag that I carry with me everywhere, and it doesn't seem to encumber me at all.
And seems to have a magically limitless amount of space
Yes.
for storing things.
And I'll use this one until I happen to come across any more orcs. So yeah, I mean, I do like the idea of a weapon actually leveling in a way with you.
And in 5e, you might actually fight orcs more often.
Yeah. But yeah, I know with D&D 5e, something that I will very much praise them on is that they did kind of give hints that with their progress in their thing, they didn't necessarily give system leaks, but they did say, oh, we're going through and retooling this because, our playtest results showed an unfavorable result, so we're retooling the combat system, or we're retooling the magic system.
One thing game companies want to avoid with that, though, is if you say, we're retooling this, players tend to keep a mental checklist of what they're working on. So they're like, oh, you worked on this. And even though you don't say give a deadline for when it's going to be released, they're going to go through the checklist. Well, you worked on this. What else is there to do? Why isn't it out yet? So you definitely want to avoid going too in-depth on that kind of stuff.
Definitely, yeah. Although I will say this, one of the reasons why I think they're actually... Exalted's actually going to meet this deadline is that they have revealed through their Monday meeting notes that the damn system's in it's at the editor's desk right now. The book is sitting on the editor's desk waiting. They're getting back chunks, like a chapter at a time, with the editor's red pen marks all over it, saying, okay...
So he doesn't miss anything.
Yep, but it's been play-tested to death now, so they're done with the playtest. Now they're just going, yeah, you misspelled this, and this, and by the way, this whole sentence here, you really don't need this.
Or clean up sentences here to make sure the rule reads clearly.
Your grammar. You're using past tense in this sentence and present tense in this sentence. Fix it.
Exactly. So they're at that stage right now. So
all the nitpicky stuff.
The nitpicky stuff. So I'm cool. I'm going. Okay.
Well, yeah, because it's almost there.
Almost there. I just have to wait for the bean counters and the editors to get done with their stuff.
Okay.
So, but yes, definitely a word to any independent game developers. Fantasycraft now, they've been a very strong independent game, and their system was based on the D20 system. Heavily customizable.
That's the one we played online and you could possibly be a Drake, right?
Correct.
Okay.
It's slowing down on their publication, and their sales numbers are dwindling. I don't know if it's because people who were involved in it have moved on to other projects, or if they dissolved their, writing group or what. But that one, I haven't seen any new releases for it at all this year, whereas on my Drive-Thru RPG newsletter that I get daily, I used to see about every 3 to 4 months them releasing like a 99-cent book, which was like, for example, they had the Infernalist book that came out.
Do you think there's a possibility that they actually oversaturated, did like the opposite thing,
where they published too much?
Yeah, because I think that's one thing that I noticed, like with 4E, they probably could have slowed down with it and maybe focused more on, I don't know, because I also enjoyed 4E and there was a lot of complainers about it.
Yeah. Well, early in 4E also, they had a thing where they were publishing a book practically every month.
Yeah, and I think they probably could have slowed down with it.
They had a new player's book, they had a new monster manual, they had a new adventures vault, they had a new world system, so you had Forgotten Realms or Eberron or Dark Sun.
Yeah. A small part of me felt like they were like, well, there's so many people complaining about this is a failed thing, so we're just going to throw all the stuff out here and just start working on the next thing.
That was still early on, though. I mean,
know.
It was released in 2008, and they released probably 20 books in the first year.
Yeah.
For our first 2 years.
Yeah.
Once you add in the adventures, they also publish, because they do publish adventures as well. Yeah. They might have gone a little bit too much, but they also had a problem of overpromising things.
Yeah, they did. And they definitely overpromised on their digital component there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think our big advice to any new game developers out there, don't overpromise. Keep people enough. Let people know a general idea how you're doing, but don't
overdo it.
Don't overdo it.
You have to find the happy medium.
You
feel like you're rushing things, like I'm pretty sure the people in D&D were feeling rushed with having to put out so many books. So with Wizards, I'm sure the people at D&D, I'm sure the people at Wizard were feeling somewhat rushed for having to put out so many books.
There were some books that had broken combinations in that book itself.
Yeah, so they obviously were rushing it.
And they weren't taking the time to play test it as well as they should.
So,
And it'll be definitely good if Wizards doesn't publish a new Splat book every month.
Yes. Like I said, I like to see about one release every 6 to 16
You said before I think when you're
months.
first...
A year is the golden...
When you're first coming out, probably having a book a year is probably really good.
Yeah. A book a year for an independent developer is beautiful.
And then once people start picking up on the game and you start, getting more from your publications, then maybe then increase. But don't overextend yourself.
Don't overextend yourself. Don't feel the need to rush things, but don't
stop giving your people stuff.
Giving people stuff. Don't let them lose hope in you.
Or just
Or
lose
just-
interest and go
Or
to a
lose
different
interest,
game.
yeah.
Or just forget about the game.
Or
Yeah.
or forget about it. Because that's pretty easy to do. I hate to say it, but us and our fellow gamers, we can have the attention span of the average kitten.
And there's just a ton of games.
And
Yeah.
there is.
Yeah, there is. It's like putting a kitten down in a room full of toys. They'll play with one and then run off and start playing with another. And as soon as one of them jiggles because they accidentally bumped it with their foot, they're playing with it and ignoring all the rest.
Yeah.
They're like little kids, too. We're almost like toddlers in that sense.
Just last podcast we were talking about Star Wars Edge of the Empire. If I was dissatisfied with one game I was playing and we decided to let it collapse, we could go play Star Wars, or we could go play D&D, which we talked about this week. So, if Shard when Shard collapsed, there was even another game, although admittedly it was aimed at the furry market, called Iron Claw, which had a very similar martial arts Asian aesthetic.
Anthropomorphized
animals, just ready, waiting for that game, for people to go, well, gee, that kind of, dwindled and fell apart. And then they were just ready. They even came out through the same publishing house, Studio 2. So they were on the same catalog as Shard. So people who saw Shard didn't see any new releases for Shard in the Studio 2 catalog would see, oh, well, there's a new release from Jade Claw. These guys seem like they might be a little more up on their stuff. And some people may have jumped systems.
Yeah, so pretty much they were vultures sitting there waiting like, you guys aren't doing enough. We're just going to wait and collect your people once you're done.
Or maybe they were just capitalizing on
Yeah.
the fact that a game they came out they liked. They didn't see something coming out, so they tried to fill that void a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just make the other people not sound evil.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I don't see vultures as evil. They're just...
They're a part of nature.
That's me. They're just a part of nature. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, in a sense, because if somebody can't... In my opinion, the game was really good. You guys seem to enjoy it.
I enjoyed Shard.
Yeah.
Same here. And I honestly haven't had a chance to play Jade Claw or Iron Claw. Actually, I think there was Iron and Jade, so...
And I was actually thinking of possibly... I did come up with an idea. I've kind of forgot. Oh, now I remember what it was. It was going to be almost like a political intrigue. And kind of using Shard's system, but either if you guys wanted to play animals, you could. Otherwise, I'd come up with a rule for how to play humans.
Well, humans would be incredibly squishy in that world.
They would, but the animal people wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
So it'd be up to you guys if you wanted to play animals or humans or however you wanted to do. But the system itself seemed to work for what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's people who are going to want to use that system and so forth. Is there anything
It's
else?
still there.
Yeah, it's still there.
Still there.
I still have the book.
I still have my PDF copy of the book.
Just because they fell apart doesn't mean that the book just mysteriously fell apart on my bookshelf, so...
That is correct.
It is...
Companies haven't quite figured that one out yet.
Yes, I am...
I'm sure Wizards would have loved when 4E came out to have all the 3-5 books just disintegrate.
Stop loving this!
And,
you will no longer have these books.
That is a lot of books, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were thinking of filling up that
Bookshelf with just all the old 3-5 stuff that we still have and just move it down
4E.
here.
Just
3-5, 4E.
Gamer books down here.
Yeah, the game systems that we aren't using as much right now.
Okay.
But yeah, now we're going to move into our last segment, which is upcoming releases. We'll start with Ranger Liz.
No, don't start with me because I forgot what it was that I
Okay,
said
we're going to
last
start
time.
with Bryan.
Upcoming releases for
video
anything.
games or role-playing games, war games, or trading card games.
Well, in terms of like most game, like a lot of games, I actually know a lot more about the privateer stuff. Their real-time strategy game has been in beta for a while. They released the campaign recently. They keep expanding that, so that's out there. So the new Hordes book just came out last month, Exigence. Beyond that, the DMG will be out in December, so I'm looking forward to that. Seeing more of the magic items as well as all the other stuff. They're apparently going to have Gestalt rules again,
which
You've never played a Gestalt character, have you?
I have, and I've had them in my games.
You can't have everyone's Gestalt or no one is. You can't.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you let one player do it, it generates one character who is possibly, or more than likely, going to be horribly, horribly broken compared to everybody else.
99% chance.
Yeah.
Unless you pick the worst combination possible.
Exactly. So yeah. Hopefully they mention that this is an optional rule.
Well, a lot of the rules are probably going to be optional.
Yeah, but I hope they specifically highlight, just like they did with feats, optional rule.
Yes, and it most likely will be. Other than that, the next book in the IK system should be out sometime next year. So, or early next year, hopefully, for the players who want to play more of a Wilds campaign.
Yes, and we got to play that at Gen Con, so
Really
I had
hoping they release that Gatorman rifle character that they had up there. I'm hoping that wasn't just somebody's model they put together. I'm hoping that actually becomes an actual model.
Yes. There was some theory that some of those models were actually going to be from upcoming releases, too.
Hopefully. As I said, that Gator... I'm hoping that Gator model comes about.
Yes. I will have to say that the Tharn knife mage that I had I had fun.
Yep.
I've always thought the gun mage had some fun mechanics, so... And to see that with a melee weapon was a very nice take. So I am looking forward to that one, too.
I'm definitely looking forward to the Warlock rules.
Yes, and I would love to see the Warlock rules, too.
Yep.
Liz.
I love dragons. So my two updates that I am looking for, or my two upcoming things, are dragon related. One, because I love dragons so much, I typed into Steam dragons, and I came across this game that's supposed to be the open alpha. So I'm not really expecting much because it's going to be alpha. That's going to be coming out. I think it's just called Dragons. I will look it up for you and send you a link to it or something, Nathan.
We will put a link in the comments.
But, not description. It's not the
a
comments.
link in the description.
But, it pretty much, it's a dragon RPG, I think. That's what it's supposed to be. So far they just have videos of dragon flying around and burning down the forest and so forth.
So will you be playing as a dragon?
Yeah, you play as the dragon, and they say that you could either rule your territory with like an iron claw or just sort of, be a...
I collect my hoard and just sleep on my pile of gold all day?
Possibly, or
the benevolent
leader.
golden dragon.
Yeah, the benevolent leader. So I'm looking forward to that, and the other thing is when we were at Gen Con, I can't believe I forgot this last time we did this podcast. I stood there and watched people. This was the first time I was actually really excited about a miniature game. And a miniature war game. And that because the miniatures are dragons. And I think it's part of the Tyranny of Dragons stuff. I don't remember the name of it exactly. Again, if I can find it, I will send you a link so you can put it in the description tonight.
Or if somebody from Wizards who was there can put in the comments what it was that she saw.
Because when we tried looking it up before, we couldn't really find it, and it made me upset. And I hope that they didn't just go, well, because it's been a very short amount of time.
Yeah,
and
since
it seemed
Gen Con.
like everything has been really
hyping up.
Well, yeah, everything was really hyped up, and it looked like it was almost complete and everything. So I'm really excited about that. So, yes, I love dragons, and those are the two things that am really excited about. But yeah, the dragon thing, I mean, I don't remember if the dragons could hover. It seemed like they always had to continue moving, and if they fly off the table, it's considered, unless your table's really small. They said if your table, table that you're playing on is really small, then you can make an exception. But at the end of the turn, the dragon has to be on the table. But otherwise, if any part of the base is off the table, it's considered that your dragon flew off the battlefield and is no longer allowed to enter.
Okay.
So and the dragon models look really good. They look like traditional, like Dungeons and dragons. They said that you can also go into ground mode to fight because there'll be ground troops, and in order to make it fair on the ground troops, I think you need to land in order to really fight them.
I'm a dragon. Why am I fighting fair?
In order to make play style. But I don't remember if you could aim down to fire at the ground troops.
I'm pretty sure the ground troops, though, also got to shoot back up.
Yeah, they... Oh, you know what? That is true. So maybe... I don't remember. I was just too excited.
Maybe the ground troops have stuff that can bring the dragons down to the earth.
That is possible.
I was about ready to hand them my debit card and go, just give it to me. Take this. Spend it on whatever you want. There's not a whole lot left on it anyway. Just give me...
Just get a handful of cash, take my money now.
Yeah, take my money now. Give me the dragons.
Yeah.
And I don't ever get excited about, I did kind of like the Hordes for war miniature games, but I don't know, it doesn't highly excite me, but that was the first time I really got excited over one.
I'll say this, there is a war game I'm interested in. Unfortunately, I know you won't be interested in it. And it is from DreamPod 9. It's the new edition of Heavy Gear Blitz. I've gotten a chance to play their beta for the new rules system. And they've really cleaned it up, made it... I mean, Heavy Gear Blitz played quick before. Unlike the quick play Alpha Strike Battletech, which I'm a big Battletech fan, so for me to say I didn't like a Battletech product, I feel like I should be having an Inquisitor come running down those steps and slamming me for heresy, but I did not like Alpha Strike.
Oh. Was that the one you learned about that one time in Gen Con where I ended up spending... I was surprised with myself that I practically spent all the money that I had for spending at Gen Con on those Battletech simulators.
No.
Okay. You didn't learn about that at that
No, I did not learn about that at Gen Con. I learned about that on the Battletech forums. Alpha Strike was it's not a computer game, it's a tabletop war game.
Okay. Just
like original Battletech, but it uses more tabletop war game rules rather than using a hexagonal map. We did play that, though, me and you, Liz.
Oh, yeah, I remember playing that now.
Yeah.
You
had the...
Because I still was somewhat excited about those Battletech simulators, and I am not one who ever liked Battletech.
Yeah.
Well, I did like the Super Nintendo game. I did play that, but other than that, I've never been really excited about it.
Yeah.
Because especially when I was younger, everything had to be animal related, so when it came to games...
Big stompy robots weren't your thing.
Yeah, big stompy robots weren't my thing, and then I got into Zoids, so...
Yeah.
Big stompy animal robots, that's a complete and different thing.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I played the Timberwolf and the Mad Cat, but go ahead.
Yeah. My thing with the Timberwolf and the Mad Cat were the same mech.
I know they were, but that's why I played them. Just in case somebody was only on one side of the faction, they're like, why is the Timberwolf? Because it was just a faction difference, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was the two factions, the Intersphere and the Clan. It both had different names. So if there's somebody out there
who's like super dedicated to Battletech, and particularly one of the factions, they'd be like, I don't know what a Timberwolf or I don't know what a Mad Cat is.
Or how dare you Intersphere free birth called the beautiful Timberwolf a Mad Cat. Yes. But with Heavy Gear Blitz, as opposed to the quick play Battletech Alpha Strike, it is and was built around being quicker playing. It plays beautifully. My big complaint with Alpha Strike was you had nearly invincible, nigh immortal light mechs who could have the crappiest pilot you could find in the inner sphere in them, but because they had these really high speed scores, you couldn't hit the damn thing even if
I remember
yes,
that.
You beat me. You beat a 100-ton mech of mine with
Pretty
a
much
little
just running around with a little thing.
with a little thing just running around and going pew 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 pew.
Just, you can't hit me. You can't hit me. I'm out of your range now.
Yeah, you would like run
100 bee stings.
Yes, death by 100 bee stings. And while I admit that should be a somewhat
awesome,
valid tactic, it should be a pack hunting tactic to work.
Yeah, it should be, or I should be able to say that this is like a major veteran pilot.
Yes, you would either need a major veteran pilot or, 5 of them. Or even 3 of them. Because you have 2 pilots of the same skill, and one guy's got a 100-ton machine crammed down with guns, versus one guy with a 20-ton machine, which has maybe a gun and a rocket pod. One guy should be in a giant smoking crater, and one guy should not. And give you a hint, it's not the guy in the 100-ton machine.
Well, it depends. I mean, if those guns are big enough, he might shoot himself and knock himself over. So he can't get up.
Well, I consider it, like, especially if you consider... I think of, like, the anime for Zoids. And you have, like, these people who pilot the Rev Raptors. Which basically look like velociraptors, except they're giant robots. But they're not as big as some of the others, and they're very light, which makes them fast, and they have these blades on them, which makes them deadly. But you have these inexperienced pilots in them, usually, because they're probably one of the more common types of Zoids out there.
Yeah.
So they generally end up getting slaughtered in them. One episode, Van, who's the main character, and has, at that point, piloted many Zoids, and is pretty much an expert Zoid pilot. He gets in one, he's pretty much wiping out everything around him. That's a difference. So if they're going to make the pilots matter, it should be a difference like that. If you put an inexperienced pilot in any Zoid, any mech, it should be felt.
Yes.
Versus putting a very experienced pilot in a mech, or
any kind of mech,
that should also make a difference. Now, I would think there should also be sort of a difference between skill. I mean, you can probably have some that are jack of all trades, they can pilot any kind of mech, but somebody who's an expert with light mechs should feel also different than somebody who...
But with the new heavy gear system, the piloting skill of the pilot is going to matter. And it's going to matter in ways that I think they were able to represent better with their system than Catalyst Game Labs was able to do with the Battletech.
So they hopefully would be able to represent that scene that I
exactly what you said. You would be able to replicate it very well.
Except with battle mechs instead of Rev Raptors.
With heavy gears instead of Rev Raptors.
Or heavy gears, yes.
Yeah. And so that's one title that I'm looking forward to. Very anxious on. Just wish I had some more people who I could play it with, because then I would be buying into that heavily. Unfortunately, I don't. I don't believe our local game center is able to actually get in any DreamPod 9 product yet. DreamPod 9, though, has been selling more in the U.S., so that may change.
Okay.
So they've been able to open up their U.S. market more, so.
Yay.
Yep. Other than that, computer game-wise, I am looking forward to the release of... ArcAge just came out officially recently.
Okay, so it's out of beta now? It's now official?
No, it is still an open beta.
Oh.
It is an open beta now. So
Well, yeah.
that is one that I'm looking forward to getting out of open beta and into final production.
Yeah, because I gotta figure that my characters aren't gonna move over with open beta.
Actually, your open beta characters, they're suggesting that, you know, you will probably have a reset after open beta.
Okay.
But Firefall actually just, I believe, exited beta. That one, it's been kind of hard to tell if it's still in beta or not. They're finally on Steam, so
Okay.
I'm going to guess they're out of beta. But that doesn't say anything because Steam Early Access.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why I think it's like November 7th or something that Dragons, whatever it's called, is supposed to be coming out. It'll be an open alpha. Part of me likes this idea. The other part of me is like, I kind of would rather wait till they come out with the full game. I think,
Or at least the open beta, because
the
open
open
beta
beta
is
says
close to
final production.
final production. Open beta is where they open up the game to stress test it.
Yeah, and get any last and final input. But at the same time, it's like, well, I can add input right away, but at the same time, I don't know what they're actually planning. I saw in the community boards for this game, somebody was making a whole bunch of suggestions, and some of them seemed like obvious, and some people are like, well, isn't that obvious? Of course you're probably going to be able to name your dragon, and the person's like, well, I don't know. They didn't put anything like this out there, so we don't know what to expect from this game. I'm just throwing out a ton of suggestions here in hope that a whole bunch of them come out, because we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know what to expect other than... So it's going to give me some idea what to expect, but at the same time, I know it's not going to be the finished product, and not to judge it until I have the finished product.
All
I
right.
probably won't even do a Let's Play until they reach at least beta, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely look forward to that Let's Play from you.
If it comes into open beta, I don't know
Well,
if we'll get
when
that
it
far.
gets to open beta, or if it gets to open beta, we will look forward to seeing that.
Yep.
But that is it for our time. We thank all of you for joining us for the Random Adventurers podcast. This has been Nate, Ranger Liz, and Bryan, and we will be signing off till next week.